Kia ora mai tātou, I runga te karanga tērā tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou. Welcome, welcome, welcome. 3 welcomes tonight to each of you and to all of you. I'd like to start with the karakia to open our space and to place ourselves in the sacredness of respect for each other. Karanga tapu te Māori tu te whiwhi ai waho puritia mai waho kene te Māori ka whakakiki, tēnei te Māori ka whakakaka. He Māori kei runga, he Māori kei raro, ka pō kei waho kei ki te whai ao ki te ao marama, ti hei Māori ora. Tēnei te mihi atu ki ngā karangataka maha te motu, Putunoi tēnei rohe, tēnei te mihi atu ki ngā iwi take take. Nā rātou te mana motu hake I te enei whenua, I tēnei moana, motu. Tēnei te mihi atu ki a rātou. We start by acknowledging the First Nations peoples of this area, the hapu of the Greater Whangarei Taringa Parawa area, and also the various hapu whose mana motu hake throughout the country has been established for centuries. Ngā mihi ki a rātou. And a mihi hoki to you who have come tonight and the invitation that we have extended as Network Waitangi Whangarei, extended to you and that you've come to hear Ngaire tonight and backed by Chris, and that you've come to share ideas with each other, to learn, to listen, and to share. So ngā mihi ki a koutou. Good on you for coming out on the night. I see a lot of Guy Fawkes activity outside on the street, so I gather that's not what we're involved in here tonight. Though there's some challenges to the English Parliament and English Crown may be involved. Just to mention, Network Waitangi is a group that has been working in Pākehā treaty education since the late 80s, and particularly acknowledgement of our whaia Joan Cook, who's passed away but who's been a long-standing mentor and confidant and inspiration for many of us in Network Waitangi over the years. It's the likes of her and others that Network Waitangi inspires Network Waitangi to carry on our work in this current era, not just the era of the last year, but the era of the last decades. So for these 30 or 40 years, Network Waitangi has been there promoting Pākehā treaty education and Tauiwi treaty education on the treaty and on the whakaputanga. So mihi to all of you on the basis of Network Waitangi's track record, if you like. We continue to do workshops. Ngaire, Catherine, Moya and others do workshops for people, introducing them to Te Tiriti-Waitangi and applying Te Tiriti into the different organisations, so what it might mean in our current contexts. And that's our key work. We also do other things like the Whiti Mai series of reading workshops that are about a future view of Aotearoa, that where we can have constitutional transformation by the year 2040, we hope. And that sort of work is carrying on as a central part of Network Waitangi's work. Before you go afterwards, it'd be good to actually have a look at the table there with the different flyers, and also note that we've got a koha box there for supporting our work in solidarity with tangata whenua. Ngā mihi ki a koutou. So, ngā mihi hoki ki a katia tātou katoa runga te karanga tērā. I'd like to hand over to Chris as our MC for the night. So Chris Farrelly is a long-standing health worker and social justice advocate and treaty advocate in our communities and beyond. And just to thank Chris for taking on the role of emceeing tonight, that you do in style and aplomb. And I'd like to hand over the evening to Chris to conduct it from here. So kia ora, mate.
Tuatahi, e te toko hoa pai, te rangatira, Tim, moto karakia, moto mihi, ke mātou o tēnei po, he mihi. E te whanui o whangarei te ringa parawa kutau mai nei o tēnei po, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you, Tim, for your words, your karakia, your mihi, and for your acknowledgement of the mana whenua of this place. And I'll just repeat that acknowledgement. I'd also just like to do, the old saying, the kumara doesn't speak of his or her own sweetness. Well, Tim is also part of Network Waitangi and has been for a long, long time. And just on behalf of Network Waitangi Whangarei, I'd just like to welcome you and acknowledge you. But I'm just wondering if the Network Waitangi Whangarei whānau who are here, could you just stand up? Show us who you are, please. There's just a sprinkling here tonight. Thank you very much. It really is, a privilege for me to be here tonight, and an honour and a very happy occasion for me, for three reasons. First of all is the kaupapa itself. Why are we here? And we are here, first of all, recognising Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Many of us in this hall tonight are Pākehā, and we are still searching for the best way and place in which to walk this journey with mana whenua, tangata whenua. You'll hear the word tonight. It's not just a fixed thing, it's quite a moving thing, a becoming thing. So we're searching in some way or other. But I would dare say we are very disturbed by what is happening in our country in recent times. And that level of disquiet and disturbance, unease, probably escalating up to anger, and what are we going to do is something that we are connected with tonight. The second thing that gives me some pleasure and joy tonight is to be here with community. You get this real sense when you come into a place like this tonight. We are very connected here in Whangarei. There's a lot of us who have values that we share, support. We don't see each other a lot sometimes, but we're there. And so to come out tonight, as you have done, not only just to listen to Ngai, but to connect with each other is so good. And the third thing that gives me joy tonight is simply because Ngaire Rae is talking. Ngaire Rae is talking tonight, and to come out to hear Ngai is very special. For myself, Tim alluded to Network Waitangi kicking off in 1990 around the 150th acknowledgements and celebration of Te Tiriti, and a lot happened in that year in our country. For me, it was a return home after 20 years overseas, working quite deeply cross-culturally in Asia. And I'd come from a cultural anthropology background, coming out of the school of when you work with another culture, you first and foremost just listen, and then you enter into dialogue and attempt to understand. Action is not there forefront, it's just being with. And I was doing that, and it seemed to be the right place for me. But in the late 80s, I became aware what was happening back home here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. and began to hear stories, what was happening, and picked up a book, the book by Claudia Orange on Te Tiriti, on the treaty. And it was an epiphany for me. I read that book and I felt, where have I been for the last, all my life? It was new, but it also led me to actually reflect that what I thought I knew, a lot of it was just false. It wasn't just ignorance, it was that I'd come through a New Zealand education system that had fed me a lot of falsity. So I came home. It was a pivotal moment, almost one would say a crisis moment in my life, to leave what I've been doing, coming home and starting from scratch at the age of 40 to understand Te Tiriti, understand the issues related to us as colonisers in this country. While a book had started this, and certainly I've read a bit and we all have, what really got me onto this road of understanding were people. People that many of us in this room know. People who have gifted us with their awhi, with their ako, with their support, kaumātua, kuia, groups of mana whenua, supporting and gently leading us Pākehā. And so I want to acknowledge those tonight. For us here in Whangarei, many of us go back to the days of Uncle Cobb, Mākene. Certainly Pona Martin and Auntie Lizzie, those two wonderful, the kaumātua and fire who taught many of us. And so tonight I'm wearing something really special. When Uncle Pona was courting Lizzie, he was 18, she was 16, out on the coast. He made this for her. He carved this beautiful carving, inlaid it with paua, and gave it to her. She was 16. And she had it round her neck all her life, never took it off, until some years ago when I was being farewelled from the DHB. And in front of Pona, she took it off her neck and put it round my neck. And he just she looked at him, he nodded. Now, why this is important, it's a symbol of what Māori have been doing for us and to us since we arrived in this country. They've gifted us generously, unconditionally, gifted and gifted and gifted. So this is, for me, it's precious, but it's a symbol of something greater. So I want to acknowledge those kuia, kaumātua, some of the names we've mentioned. I think of the Ringa Ātawhai, Whaias, who used to teach us. Today is Irama Henari's birthday. He would be 71 today. Mātua Irama picked up from his father and led us in many ways. And there are others who are around today. Te Warahi Hetaraka, Taipari Munro, and other people who teach us and lead us and never tell us we're totally, who we are, in a gentle way. So acknowledging those. In this journey, along the line, I ran into a very young, vibrant, somewhat bolshy woman called Ngaire Rae. And this goes back 30 years. So I first met Ngaire about 30 years ago. And since that time, I have carefully watched Ngaire. I have listened to her. I have been challenged by her. I have been inspired by her. And on a number of occasions have been told off by her. From the years 2003 to 2016, I was technically, on paper, her boss. We both worked for Manaia Health PHO, and I was technically the boss. But all of us, and there's some in this room, who worked at Manaia know that I was not the boss at all, There were many, many others in that organisation who were the real leaders, who really led, who carved pathways, ploughed pathways to us as an organisation, really understanding what it meant to be in the health system a Te Tiriti partner. And Ngaire was one of those. So finally I left Manaia and went to Auckland and continued my learning. But it was in a very different way in Auckland. In the Auckland City Mission, roughly 80% of all the client whānau are Māori. Not just half, but 80%. And half of that 80% whakapapa back here to Te Tautoko. Half. Big numbers. And over those years, I would sit on the pathways in the morning, wherever I could, just starting to understand and listen. And, you know, no he koe, where are you from? And you'd get the answers, you know, pipi way up into some place. And little by little, I began to hear the stories of the impact of colonization that is the root of homelessness in our country, if you dig deep enough. And, you know, so what Ngai and the others had taught me here, I began to see flesh on it and pain on it in a very different way in Tamaki Makaurau. So that's kind of how we connected. Ngaire then came to Auckland and has been doing mahi down there over the years, but at the same time started this journey of taking on the PhD program. It's a huge commitment, as again many of you would know. And Ngaire did focus, using her experience in health, how Pākehā in the health system can address inherent racism that exists. It's a big question. What do we do? How do we do it? Where do we do it? When don't we do it? And so Ngaire has tackled this, and that is the core of her thesis and her work, which she is going to present to us tonight. But Ngaire has not done this alone. Ngaire has done this with others the whole journey, primarily her own family, her husband, her tāne Richard, and her children and closer family. And all through these studies, she has deeply engaged with many people to listen, and that'll come through tonight. So while it'll on the bottom, it'll have Ngaire Rae, Dr. Ngaire Rae, there are pages and pages and pages of other people who have been part of this, and Ngaire will recognise and acknowledge these too. And within that is the richness of her work. So without any further ado, I'd like now to welcome Ngaire to the podium, and thank you for being here, and we'll now just give her a little round of applause to warm her up. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Wow, it's a good idea getting him, eh? Tēnā koutou katoa. E mihi ana ki te kai karakia e te pōnei, nau rā e tau mai te whakaaro pai ki Wainganui i te tira kua tau nei. Tēnā koe e hoa, tēnā koe. Tēnā koutou katoa i te iwi o tēnei whenua, te parawhau, Ngāti Wai, Ngāti Kahu o Torongare, Ngāti Hau, Ngāti Whātua. Tēnā koutou ki te maunga o Parihaka, te awa o Hātia, me ngā wahi tāpū katoa e whai mana ana. No Kotirana me Ingarangi o Kutupuna, Davidson, Armstrong, Martin, Sandford o Kuhapu. E whānau mai ki Whangarei, e tipuaki au ki Waipu, e noho ana au e Whangarei. He Pākehā ahau, ko Ngaire Rae taku ingoa. Kia tīmata au mā roto i te reo Māori, hei whakamana i te reo tuatahi o tēnei whenua, aha koa ki hei ko tōku reo tuatahi, tēnei tonu ka mihi, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I greet you and begin in Te Reo. It's not my first language, but I begin in Te Reo to pay my respects and my acknowledgements to the people of this land, and I follow Tim and Chris in this respect. I've got this really odd thing going on, is that I'm short-sighted, so I have to put my glasses on to see you, but I really want to look at my notes, so and I have to take them off to do that, so there'll be a few people in the room that understand that dilemma. But I want to really thank you all for coming today, for coming out in the evening. I'm super happy, and thank you, Chris, for being MC tonight. And I'm happy, I'm proud, and I'm actually really nervous to be speaking with you. This is the second of 4 weeks of talks that Network Waitangi Whangarei has organised, and our intention with these series was really to respond to the call from Māori to buffer in this particularly difficult time when so much antagonism and racism and discrimination and actually hatred is being experienced by Māori in this country. And this is our response, to step up and buffer and to talk to our people, to talk to Pākehā about how important Te Tiriti is to our future, for the future of this country and for all our mokopuna, for all of us right now and for all of those to come. Te Tiriti is the foundation of our future. And that's what Network Waitangi, so I'm a member of Network Waitangi. I've been a member of Network Waitangi for 30 years, on and off. Well, I've always been getting the emails, but the last few years I've really connected back in, and I love all my Network Waitangi mates. So just to acknowledge that this is our intention of these talks, and my talk, they didn't have to do too much twisting to encourage me to do this, but my talk today is based on my PhD study, and it's just, a little bit of what I discovered. It's okay, I'm not going to do the 300-page thesis. So this is what I started with my topic initially was exploring the treaty-based anti-racism praxis of Pākehā allies during Aotearoa health system reform. One of the things they tell you when you do a PhD is you need to be able to tell someone what it is in 3 minutes. Well, I reckon that's all in the title, but maybe not. And I remember somehow I got appointed to the DHB and as the deputy chair, and I was sitting around that board table, and I remember thinking, if it is so hard, even at this level, to change the systemic racism within the system, then I have to do some more work. I have to do some more learning. I have to understand. I have to work out how we can do this better. Because even at the board level, it felt like all the time we were just having to fight to hold a line on equity or te tiriti. So that was really the genesis of doing this study, was how do I work out how to do this work better? And it's a piece of activist scholarship, and what I mean by that is activist scholarship is about staying accountable and connected to the cause, to the movement. So one of the things that what I've tried to do is stay connected to Network Waitangi Whangarei, stay connected to STIR. That's the shirt that I'm wearing tonight. Stop Institutional Racism, yes. and actually contribute something useful to the movement in Aotearoa. So I've had that accountability. I've also had an accountability to a critical research whānau. And this is an idea that comes out of kaupapa Māori theory, but it also is evident in feminist and critical race theories, where it's a rejection of the solitary nature of doing research. It actually says, you know, research should be and is a collective endeavour. And sure, yeah, hopefully I haven't got it yet, get the PhD, but how do you do that in a collective way, and how do you organise so that you have political, strategic and cultural advice surrounding you? So I formed a critical research whānau. I had 4 Māori and 2 non-Māori who were members of my research whānau. All people that I'd known for years, that knew me well, that I trusted, that were people that would tell me what I needed to know. And one of the really important things that my critical research whānau did was they helped me select the participants. So for my study, I interviewed 7 health leaders throughout Aotearoa. There was 4 women and 3 men. They were all in reasonably senior leadership roles within the system. I interviewed each one at the end of December, in mid-22 and mid-2023, and we talked about things like their values, their background, how they did anti-racism work, what they thought about the health reforms. And the important thing is that the critical research whānau endorsed every one of those people as an ally. So it wasn't me saying, oh, I think that person is good. It was actually Māori particularly saying, yes, that person we see as our ally. We trust that person. So that was a really significant part of the study. What else do I need to tell you about that? I think that's about it. Yes. And finally, I've got a couple of disclaimers. So I'm really wanting to talk to Pākehā. And so for the Māori in the room, some of this might be triggering. And I just invite you to sit with that. But I thank you for coming, and I invite your critical feedback, because this is part of, having a activist scholarship, is being able to get critique from multiple sources. So even though I want to talk to the Pākehā in the room, I don't want to centre Pākehā. It's not all about us, believe it or not. But, one of the things that one of the members of my critical research whānau said to me very clearly was, Ngaire, you've got to stay in your lane. And, that's my lane, is working with and talking to other Pākehā. Okay. I'm trying to use my notes more, because when I spoke at lunchtime, I just completely forgot about the notes, and I did have some good notes written down. So I'm going to jump straight into it. And this is the model that came out of my research. So this is the model of all that you need for treaty-based anti-racism practices for critical Pākehā allies in the health system. There you go, on a piece of one image. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about the components of that, just as an overall, and then I'm going to break it down a little bit with a bit more of a focus on the middle part. So as I was working on this model, as I was, shaping it up, it was right towards the end of, cramming it all in to try and make sense. I met with one of my critical research whānau, Grant Bergen, and I'd sent him the latest kind of offering, and he had read my draft and then gone to bed, and he'd dreamt about the work, and he woke up the next morning with the words of the song in his mind. Ti hore mai te rangi, ti hore mai, mau mau ma te ua whiti mai te rā. So we had this kōrero and we had this chat and actually realised that the perfect name for the model is Whiti Mai te rā, which means, you know, the coming out of the sun, the clearing of the rain. So, mau mau ma te ua, stop the rain. Whiti Mai te rā, come out the sun. And the sun, you know, that represents the removal of racism. And it also brings together the findings of the study into one. So, and shines light, really, on, try and illuminate it all. So that was a gift, a beautiful gift from Grant. Some of the things that you might notice about this is, so, and for those of you who are familiar with Mātiki Mai, and Tim's mentioned Mātiki Mai, but Mātiki Mai was an initiative of the National Iwi Chairs Forum. They had about over 200 hui, thousands of people participated, and it was a conversation across the country with mainly Māori, but it was across the country talking about what would constitutional transformation look like in Aotearoa based on he whakaputanga, the declaration of sovereignty of Aotearoa, of Nutireni, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And out of this, you know, huge conversation that they had, they came up with several models of how constitutional transformation might look like in Aotearoa. And they talked about a rangatiratanga sphere, where decisions are made by Māori for Māori. A relational sphere, where, you know, the rangatiratanga and the kāwanatanga sphere meet, and the kāwanatanga sphere, which had limited authority to govern over non-Māori in Aotearoa. So what we tried to do with the model is think about where does this piece of work sit? So it sort of sits in the relational sphere, but with connections to kāwanatanga and connections to the rangatiratanga sphere. And often when you look at Mātiki Mai, they draw the spheres horizontally, and what we wanted to do here is we've drawn them vertically, and that's about actually giving prominence to rangatiratanga. So the 5 core connected concepts in the model, which is about, as I said, treaty-based anti-racism praxis. Oh, which is what I was supposed to say before, was like what's not clear about this is that I was very specific about looking at anti-Māori racism. So yes, there is racism experienced by Pacific people in this country, there is racism experienced by people of colour in this country, but my study was particularly looking at anti-Māori racism and the role of colonisation and the role of colonisers in that ongoing racism. And it was particularly looking at systematic racism. So, you know, there's interpersonal racism, there's institutional, there's systemic racism, and that's particularly what I was looking at. Sorry, let's just, you know, go back to come forward. So the first concept, and admittedly this may not be where everybody starts, but this is where we have to end up, is we have to have respect and uphold the rangatiratanga and the mana motuhake of Māori in Aotearoa. And that's depicted by the rangatiratanga sphere. So this concept is specific to Aotearoa and it informs all the other concepts in the model. The second concept is becoming consciously Pākehā. And this is depicted by the blue shaded side of the figure 8 shape that you can see. And like Avril said last week, each word is chosen carefully. And actually I do want to say, because there's a lot of similarity between what I'm talking about and what Avril talked about last week, but I did not read her book until after I submitted the PhD. In fact, I purposely didn't read her book until after I'd submitted the PhD because I'd read the intro to it and I thought, oh my God, we're just saying the same thing, which is kind of cool, but also, you know, a little bit like, anyway, so, you know, becoming, it's a really deliberate use of that word because it's a process, it's a journey. Conscious, you know, to become aware, and the deliberate use of Pākehā in terms of acknowledging ourselves as a distinct ethnic group here in Aotearoa. So there are 4 components to becoming consciously Pākehā. Cultivate an ethic of service and connection and contact with Te Ao Māori. They're on the top side of the blue shade to reflect that they're in more of a relationship with rangatiratanga sphere. The actions be accountable for Pākehā privilege and power, and the development of a positive Pākehā cultural identity are located on the bottom side of the loop, indicating a greater alignment to kāwanatanga, which is represented by the green shaded area. And the third concept of the model is treaty-based action, which is represented by the yellow side of the infinity loop. And both of those things are really crucial together. So we can be as conscious and as woke as we like, but if we are not acting, if we don't do anything, then it's not anti-racism. Yeah, so we have to act, and that was a really, really strong message that came out of my study. So it's strategic action, particularly aligned with the Māori text of Te Tiriti. Now it's visually connected to becoming consciously Pākehā, and the idea, you know, is we take action, we learn, we develop, you know, in this loop of action and reflection. So the actions located on the top side of the loop, speak up, step back, and enact Te Tiriti, are located mainly within the relational sphere, reflecting the way in which treaty-guided action of Pākehā is undertaken following strategic Māori political leadership and aspirations. So it's not that. So that's a really important point. So movements like ours, like Network Waitangi, we align ourselves to the Māori political strategic, you know, what is it that Māori are politically and strategically working towards, and how, as Pākehā, can we support that? We're not going off on our own waka doing our own thing, but we're not constantly asking Māori, what should we do and how should we do it? So there's a relationship there, but there's an understanding of the dual roles that we take. The focus on systems change and work with other Pākehā on the bottom side of the loop are mainly work for the kāwanatanga sphere. And the fourth concept, which I've already really alluded to, is this idea of critical reflection, which is represented in the model of that white arrow connecting both the blue and the yellow sphere. And I just want to talk about this word praxis. So people say, oh, you know, that's probably the most academic word in the whole thesis, Cheryl, since we know you're allergic to them. And praxis is deliberate, and it's in deference to the work of Paulo Freire, who defined praxis as reflection and action upon the world in order to transform it. Yes! So Here, the concept of critical reflection also includes critical thinking and the structural analysis required to examine power and how systems of power are manifested and maintained. And the fifth and the final concept, which is possibly the most underdeveloped part of the model, but absolutely crucial, is that we have to do this work with heart. That actually this is not an intellectual activity. This is about recognising the humanness in all of us and the fallibility in all of us, and having empathy for our fellow human beings and empathy for ourselves and all of us as we go on this journey. It reinforces this idea of doing the work with heart, reinforces the importance of being in relationship with Māori at an interpersonal, cultural and an ecological level. And it brings attention to the need to embrace people in aroha when doing this mahi, to do this work with care, respect and love. This concept also requires having empathy for ourselves and others as we become conscientised and begin or maintain a journey of anti-racism and decolonisation. It's actually about calling people in rather than calling people out. It's working in a values-based way and engaging the heart. And, you know, one of the things that we do as Pākehā is we compartmentalise our thinking and we separate everything. And the Western medical system is like the absolute, you know, epitome of how we do that. You know, you've got the heart surgeon and the brain surgeon, you know, and yeah, sure, that's really, actually, I really want to make sure I've got a specialised heart surgeon if that's what I need. But we break everything down, into component parts. And sometimes, well, actually, no, not sometimes, but we need to see the whole. And the relationship is the whole. So, yeah, doing the work with heart invites our whole being, and we need to feel our way through this. So just quickly, for those of you who enjoyed their Monday day off, who had a great day on Monday day off, and who knew that it was 189 years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence of Sovereignty over Nutireni, yeah? 28th of October 1835, Māori signed he whakaputanga o te rangatiratanga o Nutireni. It was a declaration of sovereignty over Nutireni, which was the name for New Zealand at that time. It was signed by chiefs of several hapu and waitangi. So that was an absolute declaration of mana motuhake. 5 years later, we have Te Tiriti, which reaffirmed, you know, people talk about the he whakaputanga being the tuakana. Te Tiriti is the taina, the sister or the relation document, the child document. But they both absolutely affirm the rangatiratanga of Māori over Aotearoa. And this concept requires the unconditional acceptance of this and a corresponding limitation on the kāwanatanga of the Crown and a belief in a treaty-based future. And this perspective sees the current systems that we work within as colonial structures designed and operating within the Western worldview that they represent. There is a role for Pākehā critical allies to work within this system, to address racism and to take action. And there is also a role to resource and support kaupapa Māori and te ao Māori. But ultimately, if Pākehā critical allies do not see their work as contributing to rangatiratanga and structural change, then it will be limited and it potentially is tokenistic. Advocating and working for constitutional change may not be where Pākehā start on their journey as allies, but it is the strategic focus of the movement. So that's a really, yes, we need to change systems, but actually we need constitutional and structural change in this country, or we will never eradicate racism. So respect and uphold rangatiratanga. This comes from a quote from one of my participants. All the names have been changed to protect people's identities, and the 3 that you see after there means that that came from interview 3. So it becomes more relevant when I start talking about reforms, which I'm not doing tonight. But here, Robin's talking about, to respect and uphold rangatiratanga in a way of doing that is to be really specific about what you can do. So recognising spaces where there is Māori leadership and there's no need for you to be there, and you just affirm and respect and resource those spaces. But it's also about trying to navigate where you should be and where you're useful and where you are implementing those aspirations, and then other places where you could be redirecting resource. So that's one of the ways that we can respect and uphold rangatiratanga. To be in relation with rangatiratanga, and this is, it's kind of like it's like a no-brainer, right? You have to be an ally to something or someone. You can't just be an ally for yourself. So who are you in relationship with? If you think about, if you work for an organisation, what are your relationships with other Māori organisations? What's your governance structure? Do you know who the mana whenua is in your rohi? Do you have a connection with them? Those are the things that we need to be thinking about when we're talking about being in relation from a treaty perspective. And people also talked about, these relationships aren't, and perfect, beautiful kōrero from Chris, who talked about the depth of relationship. And particularly here, Jill is talking about, you have to earn trust, you have to demonstrate it, and you have to show people that you said that you would do what you said you would do. And it takes a long time and a commitment. It's not an in and out. And often as Pākehā, we have transactional relationships. We need to move beyond having a transactional relationship and think about relationships for life. This is the second concept, becoming consciously Pākehā, and those are the 4 components that I've talked about. But I used to have this quote handwritten on a large sheet of paper in black felt pen hanging in my kitchen 30 years ago when my kids were at kohanga. And I thought it was very good to remind me about that it's good that you Pākehā are who you are, and it's important that you know who you are. So, it's good. It's good to be Pākehā. It's fine. But you have to know that you know who you are. You need to understand how you are who you are and how powerfully you are who you are. And I think that quote, which has stayed with me all these years, is still so powerful and does represent a lot of what we're talking about in terms of becoming consciously Pākehā. Part of this is, understanding our colonial history is again what Chris talked about. So one of the first concepts, one of the parts of becoming consciously Pākehā is being accountable for Pākehā privilege and power. And, contrary to what some people might think, it's Pākehā who are privileged in Aotearoa, New Zealand. It is our language that dominates. It is our systems, our way of thinking, our culture that is normalised. The fish doesn't see the water that it swims in. This privilege is often unseen, unacknowledged and unasked for. But we still benefit from it. So, as Jill says, one of the things that we have to do as good allies is get better at understanding our own privilege, what that actually means, and how we communicate that to fellow Pākehā. And David talked about, because all of this is about power. Yeah, it is. It's all about power. And you have to understand when you're in those positions of power and what positions you hold, what you are able to do, and ideally, this is the crux of it, how much of that power can you let go? So for all of us that work within institutions, who work within organisations, we are powerful. How do we use that power? And this last quote, thinking about Pākehā privilege, and often Pākehā talk about that they experience discrimination or that they've had it hard. And yeah, sure, Pākehā still live in poverty, and some people Pākehā do experience harsh conditions as well. But one of the things that we've got to absolutely realise is that we will never experience racism in this country. So, just this, this quote from Jill. I reflect on that quite often, and think it doesn't matter how tired I am. It's not the same kind of tired as living with racism. So we've this, one of the other components of becoming consciously Pākehā is having a positive Pākehā cultural identity. Like, I'm proud to be called myself a Pākehā. Like, I can't be Pākehā anywhere else in the world. How cool is that? And, being a Pākehā is in relation with Māori. That's the name Māori gave us. How cool is that? And it's when we call ourselves Pākehā, we're acknowledging Māori, we're acknowledging tangata whenua. And that first quote there from Robin, she talks about, even like her family have been here for generations, but she still considers herself manuhiri. Now that's not, what she was talking about there is that what that means is that she is respectful of the people of this place, acknowledging that the people that she comes from are on the other side of the world. Yes, she is here, and she lives here, and she has a right to be here, and she has that right under Te Tiriti, as she says, but it's how we orientate ourselves to being here. Let's work out whose house we're in. We take the shoes off at the door. And the last part of this Pākehā cultural identity is all of the participants, none of them wanted to be called an ally. Like, they would never claim that identity as theirs. They were they thought it was awesome that that's how Māori saw them, but they wouldn't have said that that's what they were themselves. It's not an identity that they would have claimed. And it was in recognition of their humility, really, their humbleness. Connection and contact with Te Ao Māori develops a Pākehā identity, particularly because we start to see the awareness of our own culture. And here Colin is talking about, and this again reflects Chris's kōrero about the significance of relationships with kaumātua and the generosity and the beautiful sharing and aroha that we gain from these relationships. But this bottom quote here from Jill, she talks about how she realises, the diversity of Māori thought. There is not one Māori way of doing it. Not just like we would never expect there to be one Pākehā way of doing anything. So what Jill is saying here is, and part of this relates to this idea of Pākehā fragility or Pākehā paralysis, that, I don't know what to do. Well, she's really clear. Actually, I have to accept that at some level that's going to be the case, that some people will criticise her for doing it this way. But actually making sure that the people that matter for the thing that she is doing are comfortable. And it goes back to having those relationships of accountability and connection that are true. This is one of the really important parts of the Becoming Consciously Pākehā. And nearly every single one of the people that I talked to talked about cultivating an ethic of service. It's not about me. Those exact words were said by nearly all of the participants. It's not about me. They wanted to be seen as being useful, having skills and knowledge to contribute to the cause, but not making it about themselves. And, one of them said to me, there's no way I would have said yes to doing this interview if you weren't friends with my daughter. She was like, I'm only doing this as a favour. Because she was so, didn't want to be in the, this is not about her. She had a real, beautiful, humble way of being. And one of the things, the first interviews that I did, this came up, this idea of, and I started to talk about it, as in terms of being of service, that people were clear about being of service, so contributing to the cause. And in the second interviews, I spoke to the participants about that again, and we started to unpack it a little bit more. And here, Jill, I haven't got it up yet. Here, Jill is talking about how this white saviour, it's a rejection of being a white saviour. And if you think about it, the white saviour trope, the white people are going to come in and save the people. We're going to save the Indigenous people. We're going to, help out. We're going to, we'll fix it. So it's a real kind of rejection of that a white saviour is in service of your ego, but cultivating an ethic of service is in service of your spirit. So, yes, we benefit from being of service, but it's about how we do that. And, all those questions that Jill's asking there, am I in this space for the right reason? What are my intentions of being here? Have I been asked to be here? Have I stepped into the space that other people could be in with much more usefully than me? All of those really critical questions that we should be asking ourselves when we do this mahi. So the third concept is treaty-based action. So act. One of the initial themes that I came up with was just action. 10 minutes. Okay, I'll go quicker. Because everyone was like, you've got to do stuff. It's not anti-racism. That's the T-shirt I've got on. Anti-racism, it's a verb. It's a doing word. So really, really important to think about that. And it's strategic, collective, organised action based on enacting Te Tiriti. So just a couple of examples here. So people talk, speaking up and stepping back, getting out of the way, actually is probably one of the most important things that Pākehā leaders in organisations can do, is sometimes get out of the way so that other people, particularly Māori leadership, can come and be supported and fostered. And here's an example from Jill again, and an example of speaking up. Why do we not have our Māori leaders here? Oh, and they say, oh no, it's just a small conversation. Who's heard that before? Yeah. And later, the person saying to them, you were the only person who said that we needed to be there. And if you hadn't said that, we wouldn't have been there. So speaking up. So, this, of course, we need to challenge interpersonal racism. But it is also noticing in the system where we can, identify the gaps and challenge what's happening. Acting strategically. It would be a lie to say people weren't conscious about thinking about, when they take action. You have to constantly, as Robin says, you have to constantly be trying to work out how to do it, whether to do it, what to do, constant. And she also talks about that you need to do that in collective, thinking with other people about your tactics. So if you're working in an organisation and you are trying to change your organisation, get some friends. Have a group of you and be strategic. Get a plan. Get a plan. Base your plan on Te Tiriti, because it's a really good guide. And that brings me to the, just before I move on too quickly, is the other thing about acting strategically is people talked about language. So sometimes we have to be really careful about the language that we use if we want to keep people with us. So, talking about, and maybe instead of talking about rangatiratanga, we might talk about Māori making decisions for Māori. But it's not compromising, but it is being clever about how we think about our language. The other two things that came up really importantly here were persistence. Be persistent. Do not stop. The system will constantly want to revert. It will constantly want to reset itself, so we have to be persistent and use the tools that we have. There's heaps of tools. There's heaps of really cool guides. And probably, now I get to press the page, one of the most amazing guides that we have is Te Tiriti itself, right? The 5 parts of Te Tiriti, we can enact them. We can think about the preamble, Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, and Ngā Ritinga, the 4th oral article. There's the 5 parts of Te Tiriti. They are all a guide for how we can implement change within organisations. And here we have Tanya, and so orititanga is te reo Māori more for equity, or one of the ways of talking about equity. Basically my whole philosophy, it's why I work in Māori in specific spaces. And so she's talking about, here you can see in her quote that she's actually thinking specifically about how you use the articles and implement them in your mahi. And again, here's Robin, same thing. But the point that's really important about this is that we conflate te tiriti and equity. And actually, we need to have real clarity on the difference between a treaty-led approach and an equity approach. So equity for Māori is a treaty right and a social justice right. Equity for all people in Aotearoa is part of a social justice agenda. Both are required to address health inequities, but to address the determinants of Māori health inequities, which include racism and colonisation, a treaty approach is required. So if people start, and what is happening now in the system is they've erasing te tiriti, and they're starting to talk about equity, but it's performative bullshit. It's just words on paper, and it is not translating into action. And all the health cuts that we're seeing, it's the equity roles that are being taken. So when we're focusing on systems change, which is one of the other parts of treaty-based action, we need good leadership. If we don't have good leadership, there's no change is going to happen, and we particularly need Māori leadership. Addressing racism within health systems requires system-level change using systems thinking, multi-level, multi-strategy plans which implemented policy into mandatory practice with accompanying monitoring and accountability frameworks led by Māori with ongoing funding and resourcing. That's best practice. Part of this as well is about focusing the gaze on the system and rejecting the dominant victim-blaming narrative. So one of the things that we do so well in this country is we blame the people for the situations in their life that they find themselves in, instead of thinking what happened systematically in order for them to have landed where they are. So changing the focus to the system. And here's the big word, Cheryl. One of the papers that I read, they talked about quotidian unsettling. And I had to look that up. But does anybody else in the room know what quotidian means? Daily. Yes. Well done, Tim. Everyday, daily actions. Yeah. Which, why don't they just say that, eh? Right? So, everyday anti-racism actions. We can all do something every day that is anti-racist. Even if it is just making sure that you pronounce te reo Māori words correctly. So there's anything that we can do any day that can make a change. Just nearly getting there, Chris, getting there. Working with other Pākehā. This is really the Network Waitangi Whangarei recruitment drive. And it's pretty simple, this one, but really, like the message is, don't ask Māori to do this for you. You need to recognise this as a you issue. So there's work for us to do, whānau? There's work for us to do. We need to know who we are, how we are who we are. We need to understand our family, understand our history, understand our power and our privilege, and do something about it. And, an example in that bottom quote, again, it's those critical questions, that people are asking themselves. Fourth concept is around critical reflection and critical thinking, and I've talked a lot about this already, but this is that tying in of becoming consciously Pākehā with treaty-based action and that infinity loop. That we become, like Chris talked about his aha moment, we may not all become conscious by having an aha moment. Some of my participants talked about it's like a slow blanket being wrapped around you. I thought that was quite beautiful. But so we have our consciousness is raised, and then we take some action, and then we learn some more, and then we take some more action, and we reflect on that, and we take some more action. And you have to do that in conjunction with other people. You can't just do that yes, you have to do a little bit of your own, yes, you do your own work, but you have a conversation, a relationship with people. And that final point, in that top one, Ben's talking about, being aware of your privilege and being critical about yourself. And down the bottom there, Tanya's talking about, You know, it's really important. It's okay to make mistakes and learn from your mistakes, but don't stop. Keep going and get uncomfortable. Like, that's the thing about us Pākehā, are so used to being comfortable all the time. Everywhere we go, it's okay for us. You know, and I go back to that quote before about, you know, let's compare our uncomfortability with what it's like to live with racism every day. Finally, getting there is doing the work with heart. And I talked a little bit about this at the beginning. But really, I mean, I get angry. I get really angry. And I have to really work on this, because it doesn't, I get angry with people. But that's actually not going to change people, getting angry with them. It might motivate action, but it won't change people. So, you know, the wisdom of the people that I talked to was incredible. And, you know, they talked about lifting people up and having empathy for people on this journey. So the final concept of doing the work with heart emphasises the role of being in relation and the motivation of doing this work out of care and respect and love for everybody. And ultimately this work requires an orientation to engage with emotion. And in this study, participants described interpersonal relationships with Māori that were precious to them. They described relationships that were lifelong, trusting, safe, honest and challenging. And although it wasn't explicitly stated, they described relationships bound in love. And I just found this quote by Glenn Colquhoun, who's a Pākehā doc, who has spent a lot of his time, I mean, he would have been a great participant, but he wasn't. But he talked about, you know, I have walked a cultural coastline. I love that phrase. Hey, a cultural coastline for many years, and I still believe in those most old-fashioned of sentiments, love and aroha, those giant feelings in the chest that make us respond to each other, our inner tides and waves tugged without mercy by the great moon of the heart. And that came, by the way, from a State of the Pākehā Nation speech, which was organised by Network Waitangi in 2015, and they're all available on our Network Waitangi website. It's a bit of a plug. And just to bring us back, that's the whole model, all there. And those 5 concepts, respect and uphold rangatiratanga, becoming consciously Pākehā, treaty-based action, critical reflection, and doing the work with heart, although they're separated here to make it possible to describe and delineate the various elements, in practice, they come together as a whole. There are threads within each concept that are woven throughout. For example, relationships with Māori, relationships among Pākehā, relationships constitutionally, the relationship between people and system change, relationships between action and reflection, but most importantly though, about relationship between people and this land that we all call home. And the very last slide is this beautiful poem by Erin Thomas. And my beautiful friend Ag, who's a member of Network Waitangi, gifts us every time we meet with the beautiful gift of poetry. And she shared this with us the other night. And I thought, oh, this is perfect for my talk. Because actually, I haven't even mentioned it, but the talk is from the treaty and me to te tiriti and we. So it's about emphasising the Māori text of te tiriti and the significance and importance of being in relation and being in relationship as we do this mahi. So may we welcome the transformation in ourselves, us and others. May we lead with imagination and grow what it uncovers. This journey will be daunting for guests in another's home, but to all it is constant, and here is where we start from. Let us move towards liberation, grounded in the earth, air and sea. And may our dreams of relation take us all from me to we. Kia ora, everybody.
In a quite short space of time, Ngaire has opened doors and windows, and there's just an immense amount of things that have just been put up into the air and are landing as we listen, and will continue to land as we reflect afterwards. The process now, though, is for us just to connect with those, with the person next to you, just for a couple of minutes, just any kind of reflections from what you've heard, and is there a question you'd like to ask? We're not taking questions from the floor, we're just asking if there are any questions, write it on the post-it note that you'll have. So just a little reflection with the person, is there a question you'd like to ask? Frankly, we will go home with a lot of questions, and even the questions that will come tonight will not all be able to be answered. But what is happening, I've discovered, is that Network Waitangi are using those questions to actually open up another series and another layer of learning. The questions are really important as the answers. So that's a little piece of thing we'll do now. Just as we do it, we've got a community code, which is quite important. So we are curious, we're open, and we are respectful. We speak from our own experience. Make space, take space, and finally, no one knows everything. So we'll just do this now, just for a few moments, for a few minutes, and then we'll come back to look at some of those questions thematically. Kia ora anō whānau. You'll see now on the couch Moya and Ngaire are positioning themselves, and just going to start just some reflecting on the questions. Just like Moya, there's one that's been reoccurring really today, and that probably will come up tonight. So Moya, I'll just probably throw this open to you at the moment to pose the question and answer it.
You can do whatever you like.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui, kia koutou. I'm just here supporting Ngaire because it's a we thing, not a me thing, right?
Yes.
So just, physically doing that. But what came up this at the lunchtime one, somebody asked, so what do you do when somebody says something kind of racist, and so how do you actually react? And so I've been thinking about it all afternoon, really. You never get the right answer, on the spot, of course, but I think it was around that thing of, for me, thinking about racism as actually kind of like a mental illness, because that's what it is, it really is. And you never mentioned the doctrine of discovery and the great, great chain of being and everything like you did at lunchtime. But that's that 600 years old foundations of racism, that English are the best people in the world, the best civilization in the world, And, you know, we put the French down the bottom of the triangle because we had issues with them, you know, and all the other European cultures in the, you know, in the middle. And then that was bad enough, you know, but then when we met the Indigenous people around the world, at that time, around that 600 years ago, they thought, well, are they actually human beings? Are they actually human beings? Communication was, you know, not good. And so that's where we get the foundations. The 600 years old, those racist terms, the narrative of that time, are they human beings? No. You know, and this is rough to hear, but it won't be unfamiliar. No, they are childlike, animal-like, you know, ape-like, inferior, heathen, savages, natives, othered, you know, othered. See, it's like that. And so, you know, those terms won't be new to you because we hear them from the white supremacist groups, you know, now. And so, you know, the goal of being anti-racist is to, you know, to tackle it, but whether we will ever eradicate it like polio, I don't know, because it is a mental illness, that feeling that, you know, my culture is better than yours, my culture is better than yours, you know, that's the basis of it all. How we do health is better than the way you do health. That's the whole basis of it. So anyway, getting back to the question, what do you do if you think of it as an illness? So when somebody expresses something to you, you know, it could be, I mean, there's a continuum. And the other thing I say, we're all racist. I've been thinking about it for 34 years, but I'm still racist. And I say it in the workshops to make people relax, because it's just a continuum, you know, of you kind of, you know, all racism is harmful. So on the lower end, it's still harmful, but on that other end of the continuum, it's a killer, you know, and that's where that all your institutional stuff is somebody saying, well, we don't need a Māori health authority. That's actually a killer. It's a killer statement. It's going to make people die younger than they should, and many other things. So you've got the killer stuff, the actual war. But on this end where maybe you have personal racism without much power, because, you know, racism is just stereotypes plus power, you know. So on the less powerful type, you know, you might have someone say, oh, those, you know, all those scholarships, Māori are just so privileged getting all these scholarships and everything. And you kind of think, well, okay, it's like someone presents to you, you know, they've got a cold. Like COVID's at that end, you know, but this person's got a cold. And so you've got to feel aroha for them, you know. So like you'd say, oh, you know, if you've got a cold, you need a lemsip or a hot drink, or, you know, you need to sit down or something. So it's the same with a little bit of racism. It's like, because I say, you know, I still think racist thoughts, right? I think racist thoughts, I do. And I'm not just saying that in workshops to make people feel comfortable, I actually do. But the difference is then when I do, I stop and go, oh my God, did I not get a good night's sleep last night? Am I hungry? Am I irritable? Am I feeling insecure, powerless? Something about this other person is annoying me? So, you know, you've got to turn it back to what's wrong with you today. You know, you'll never get rid of it. I reckon 600 years, it's just locked in there. Good luck with trying to get rid of it. All you can do, it's a bit like there's no such thing as objectivity, there's only controlled subjectivity. It's a bit like racism. You know, there's no such thing as an anti-racist person unless you grew up in a bubble somewhere. But all you can do is control it somehow and manage it. And so when you come up with somebody like that, what's the antidote to their problem is fear and ignorance. That's the cough they got, the feeling. So they're not feeling great today. So the antidote is not a lemsip, it's information. Information. So you don't have to get all emotional about it. Just whip out the phone. Let's just see. How many Māori scholarships are there compared to general scholarships available to children or students going to university today? Crikey, there's about 20 to 1. You can get 20, there's 20 Pākehā scholarships, mainstream scholarships, and then it says also that, all that Māori scholarship money came from Māori land. The profit from Māori, the tiny bits that are still there, and that because that's a priority for education, not warfare.
So given there's a continuum of racists, is it worthwhile being a friend with a hardened racist?
I don't. Yeah, nah. Well, nah.
I think
no. Some people, some people know that it's beyond the pale, and they're gonna die.
I think it's sort of like, energy in, energy out. Like, what are you going to get out of it? I think that would be the way up, that you'd have to, like, having a real considered approach about, is it worth?
How powerful are they?
How powerful are they?
How
is
much
it worth
money?
the energy? And is there any possibility of change? But, yeah, I think,
Thank you.
that's about all I can offer on that.
Can I jump in at another deep end with the Treaty's Principles Bill on the horizon, or the process? How do we respond to the general statement, we are all equal, as a wraparound statement about the need for the proposed Principles Bill? We are all equal.
Dreaming.
Yeah, well, it's a fallacy. That's an untruth, isn't it? That we are not all equal. I purposefully did not talk about the atrocious health statistics that we have in this country, because, they're just, we do not, the focus for this is actually what are we going to do about it. It's not about us justifying the case. Well, in my opinion, there's more than enough evidence to show that we are not equal in this country. Incarceration rates, arrest rates, life expectancy, education statistics, you name it. And it goes back to, how we think about that. So a racist view of that is that, that there's something wrong with people that is why they are, more likely to end up in prison, that there's something wrong with them, rather than thinking, what is wrong with the system? What is wrong with how we view, that the fact that we target where we put police, there's also, all of those things. But there is definitely, we are not all equal, but that is a complete myth.
Thanks, Ngaire. Another question specifically for you. How will the model you have presented this evening play out in the workplace, such as in the health system?
Well, my plan is to do a little bit more of kōrero like this with people who work in systems and talk with them about this. Particularly, I think, those concepts around becoming consciously Pākehā and treaty-based action. There's a lot more in there to unpack about, which is really useful in terms of tools and strategies and ways of thinking about how we can implement Te Tiriti within workplaces. I was focused on the health system, but I think it is applicable in other places as well. Yeah.
Thank you. There's something here about education has come up. The first is, how can we as Pākehā become better informed with Te Tiriti education?
Oh, well, on the 28th of November, Catherine and I are running a public workshop on an introduction to Te Tiriti o Waitangi. But, there are so many good books. There's really, Moya has been doing amazing online workshops. So when's our next online workshop, Moya? Have we got one?
Not planned.
But we do.
Before Christmas.
There will be ones coming up. So, there's those opportunities, online workshops, face-to-face workshops. There's so many good books. There's a whole section in the library.
And actually, on the desk out there is questions and answers,
yes,
which a group of us are
$6.
currently updating. But that's still really good information on the questions and answers. The Ngāpuhi Speaks is if you want to go a deeper dive, but that was all the evidence given by the claimants in 2010 on the Ngāpuhi Stage 1 claims. And it actually reminded me, Chris, when you mentioned Ngaire Rae, his quote in Ngāpuhi Speaks about the two texts, the Māori text and the English text, and he said, amazing quote, he said, if there's any ever proof that that the rangatira never signed away their authority to the Queen, is that Hobson would have been killed and eaten if he had mentioned it. Because it would have been the ultimate insult. It would have been the ultimate insult, and so that would be the proper response to being insulted like that. That was a really powerful quote. So Ngāpuhi Speaks is authentic voice written by community psychologists, different from the Waitangi Tribunal report.
But actually, just about that, the Waitangi Tribunal reports in themselves are an incredible archive of history throughout Aotearoa that are accessible online.
Thank you. This one comes from somebody who's obviously in educating people, students in the tertiary sector. As an educator, how can I most succinctly convey to my students of all cultures what it means to embody Te Tiriti principles as they go out to work in healthcare as support workers?
Oh, for God, eradicate the word principles from your vocabulary in your question and your daily practice.
Yeah.
Because, the articles, what Ngaire was saying, the 5, and I've seen it done, that the Declaration of Independence is the wrist or the elbow or the wrist, and then you've got the preamble 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And that's how you're operating on your everyday, that all of those things are operating. But the principles is a mean, vicious concept that seeks to weaken Te Tiriti, the Māori text. It seeks to weaken it, and there's already 5 different sets. Seymour's will be 6, number 6. And in your everyday health practice, most people know the 3 Ps, partnership, participation and protection. Well, that's the same age, those principles, as my daughter, 36 years old. 36 years old with all the best intentions of all of these generations of health workers. Have the statistics changed using the 3 Ps? Sorry, no.
Speaking as that educator who asked, that's the exact language that NZQA requires us to teach our students as support workers. We are required to certify that they are using treaty principles in their workplace.
Right, so we need to get that changed. And subvert it. Like the 5 parts, I just absolutely endorse what Moya's just said. The 5 parts of Te Tiriti, the preamble and the 4 articles. Yeah.
Thank you. Can we just drop down to schools, primary, secondary schools? I referred when I opened how wrong my education had been, if it had been, in this area. Are New Zealand schools teaching children about Te Tiriti? If not, why not?
Well, I mean, I don't know about all schools, but it was only just recently that it has been introduced. New Zealand history has been introduced into the curriculum, and already the national government is calling that into question and refocusing on reading, writing, arithmetic. We have tomorrow's school. We still have a situation of tomorrow's school. So schools can choose what curriculum, to a certain degree, that they choose to teach their children. So some schools will be teaching Te Tiriti, and some schools may not be. But
yeah, and a really good resource, if any teachers are out there, is called Critical Histories, and it's a whole curriculum resource by Tamsin Hanley. I think from year 1 right through. And a brilliant resource. And we're really, it's very hard to get into the talk to teachers in schools, but I think that's on our list of things to do, is to talk to the teachers, because I reckon, talking about treaty and race relations, it's like sex education. You just don't put your woodwork teacher in there, and expect to have a great session. That you have to have the teachers comfortable, sure in their own culture and confident and, relaxed about it, before you can really get anywhere, I think, because there's so much angst, and misinformation out there, yeah. It's a challenge.
Now, I hope you're ready for a big one here, because it could be the last big one, and there's probably no one answer for this, but can you deconstruct institutional racism? How in our organisations in this country?
Well, I don't know. Get a plan. Like, one of the things that one of my supervisors was Dr. Heather Kame, and she talks about mapping the sites of institutional racism. So you work with the people in the system to map where the institutional racism resides, and then you pick each one of those sites and you dismantle it. You take it apart. You get a plan to dismantle the sites of where the racism is residing. However, I do think that is an approach that we have to do, but what we also need to realise is that most of our systems, or nearly all of our systems, our justice, our education, our health, they are Western, Eurocentric. They are based in a worldview that is not Te Ao Māori. So yes, we can change and we can adapt and we can work and try and decolonise those systems, but we also must support the flourishing of Te Ao Māori systems, and kaupapa Māori, Indigenous systems to flourish as well. And system's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Yeah, so I think we have to do that. We have to address the racism that we see, but we also have to make space for the flourishing of indigeneity.
Yeah, I think it's Article 1, Article 2 stuff. Like, if you say Article 2 is a circle and Article 1 is a square, and it's going to hurt. It hurts and it's damaging, and I'm not really sure there's time for us to work on our racism, all of us Pākehā, before we hurt too many more Māori. I mean, I had 2 Māori children. I chose to put them into kura kaupapa Māori because I knew the outcomes were going to be better for them than in the mainstream system. So we have to resource Māori everything so that, we've got the space too to work on our getting our edges, filing our sharp edges off so that we can at least be in relationship with the circle.
Nice.
Takes time.
It's good. So, and just Article 1 is the affirmed rangatiratanga of Māori over Aotearoa. Article 2, limited authority for the Crown to govern over non-Māori. The other way around. Article 1 was kāwanatanga. Article 2 was tino rangatiratanga. Squares and circles.
Yeah, square and circle, and it's always like that. And it always will be, because the cultures are just like you couldn't if you're Machiavelli using let's have this top-down hierarchical culture, bring it over here and put it in this really horizontal culture and see what happens. No, it's like, and I like talking about when you said about using the wrong language. I think it was in the 90s, and I was invited to speak to some nurses, and I really blew it. I was kind of young, like a puppy. But I compared colonisation to cancer. And, I feel more confident now to say that, having been both a coloniser and a cancer sufferer, I suppose, that it is that total takeover. It's that massive total attack on the host. You know what I mean? But some of those nurses in the 90s got up and walked out. So I think we've come a long way. We actually have. Nobody's walking out.
That's hopeful. Just a little practical one to end with, Ngaire's. The diagram has obviously really hit, something that's really tangible for us. So would we be able to use this diagram model within our workplace or at home? Is it available? Will it be available? Is it something that we can have?
My PhD is still currently under examination. So once that's completed, it will be published on Open. The thesis will be published, and I am hoping to. I will publish, particularly just on the model, so it will be available. And my plan is to, yes. The answer is yes, but not right now. Yeah.
Thank you. We could obviously continue for some hours, and we will on other occasions. Moya, thank you as well for being here. And both of you, on our wall where Ngaire and I used to work, there were 3 kupu. And our whaia, Annie Fox, from day one said, once you put a kupu on the wall, Māori kupu, you have to live it. Right? Don't play around with our words. Don't play around with our words. They mean they're dead. So the kupu were tika, pono, and aroha. And I can say that Ngaire Rae, both in her presentation this evening, in her study, in the way she has processed this whole piece of work, and in her life, lives out the tika, pono, and aroha. Pono is what is right. What is right is the centre. Then the tika is doing what is right, putting that into action. And then, of course, the aroha is how you put it into action with aroha. And today I said there's actually a 4th one for me that has emerged listening to Ngaire that is really important. It's the term whakaiti, humility. Be humble be humble, be humble. So we'll take those kupu home because you are living them, the two of you, so thank you. So it wouldn't be right for me to go through and try, MCs often try and summarise what the speaker has said and make a mess of it. Let what has been said just rest with you in your hearts, in your thinking, in your spaces, continue to talk, and there will be more. There'll be more reflections and more kōrero as we unravel and journey this together. So nō reira, tēnā kōrua, tēnā kōrua, tēnā kōrua. And as we end, I've been asked to, I think, if I'm right, Yeta has to come up and say something.
Kia ora koutou. Well, that's a pretty hard act to follow, so I won't even try. I'm Yeta, very new with Network Waitangi, and just really want to say thank you to the group for allowing me to be part of the group and be in action. It's a privilege to be working with all of you, and I'm delighted to see so many people who've turned out for this event, so thank you for coming. My main job here tonight is to firstly thank our MC Chris. His kōrero has been very inspiring this evening too. It's almost like we've got two great speakers for the price of one, so thank you, Chris. We have a copy of Te Kaua Tuku Iho, Inheriting the Sacred Jawbone, Indigenous Knowledge Holders Reimagine Education, which may well be very relevant to some of the people who ask questions here tonight. And that has been shared with us by the author, who is Maya Hetaraka. So thank you, Chris, for your generosity tonight.
Thank you very much.
And of course, the amazing Ngaire. She already has copies of all the books we thought we could give her. So I'm not quite sure what's in the mysterious envelope, but I'm sure it will be something lovely. And thank you so much, Ngaire, for your inspirational mahi and kōrero. And yeah.
Well, I told them that they weren't allowed to get me anything because I'm a member of Network Waitangi and it feels a bit weird. But Yeta has been the powerhouse behind these series. She has rallied us and organised us, and but you know, we need to really, really honour and thank Yeta for all the mahi that she's done to get these series together. So, kia ora, Yeta. Kia ora.
Thank you again, Yeta, and thank you, everyone. Can I just ask Tim to come forward and close the evening for us? Thanks, Tim.
Kia hiwara, kia hiwara. Kia hiwara ki tēnei tuku, kia hiwara ki tērā tuku. Kia tū, kia matara, kia ata matara. Ngā iwi ngā mana ngā rauranga tira mā, a tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Te mihi tuatai ki a koe e te rangatire e Tim. E nau te karakia mai, e tuwhia mai te kaupapa mo tēnei pō, mi a te tia ki a koe. Kia koe hoki e Chris, kai arahi mo tēnei pō, e tēnei taku karanga ki a koe. A kaurua e noho mai i runga te tūru, ke runga te ātamira rā, a nā mi a te tēnei ki a kaurua. Ka tua ke nei, hei mihi mai ki a koutou mai a mātou nei, ko tau mai nei, ki te whakarongo ki a koutou. So I'm standing on our behalf to thank those who have turned up to our speakers here. But I just wanted to say that my wife booked us in to come here tonight. And I said to her, why the hell do I want to come here? I go to all our Māori tiriti kōrero and whatnot. And the reason why we're here is because we're talking about a tiriti partnership. We can't have a partnership of one. So I need to understand what you're thinking too. And likewise, you need to understand what we're thinking as well. So I congratulate you for putting this on. This is fantastic. And this needs to go out more places. And, you know, I really do thank you for this. It's an opportunity that it's too good to be missed. And thank you, my wife, for doing that. But also, you know, what a marvellous, we've got people who have expertise in those areas. We've got people here in whānau that help people. So why aren't we using them a lot more? Let's get in behind them. Let's give them our tautoko, give them our support, because they are moving us in the right direction. When I look at Tim doing the karakia, when I look at Chris with using our kōrero, Ngaire, throwing in our kupu Māori in here as well, and I bet you guys are doing the same too. Hey, I applaud you. That is our culture. You are keeping our culture alive as well. When we look at that, we say that's our culture. Hey, aren't we all in the one country? So thank you very much for this. I appreciate being able to sit here and listen to this kōrero, and I thank you for this, and I thank you all for making this available for us all today. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
We acknowledge your words to us, mātua. Thank you, he mihi, he mihi, he mihi. And we acknowledge your wife who's brought you here tonight. Thank you.
Tēnā koe matua. Mo tō reo tautoko. To close, please stay for a cup of tea afterwards. We continue the conversation amongst ourselves. And please share some of the resources that are out there. Ngā mihi ki a koutou, ngā mihi ki ngā tangata whenua, ngā mihi ki ngā kaikororo. Tēnā.
Just one thing.
Just one thing.
Tuesday, November the 12th. You're all very welcome to come at 9 o'clock to Kakapuruini Marae, Puruini Ave at 9 o'clock.
9 a.m. or p.m.?
9 a.m. on Tuesday the 12th of November. Assemble at Kakapuruini Avenue and hikoi with the hikoi through the town to Laurie Hall Park, where there will be speeches and an activation lasting until 11 o'clock. So this is how you awhi and be in relationship to Māori protecting Te Tiriti, is join, walk together from Puruini Ave to Laurie Hall Park, 9 till 11, November the 12th.
Yeah.
Kia ora mai.
And donate to the Protect Onoki Fund, trying to stop they're already 20 grand in debt with lawyers to try to protect Wāhi Tapu and Te Kamo. So find out on our website, there's all those information how you can donate directly to that 20 grand legal fee and walk the talk on the 12th. Kia ora.
Kia ora moia, 1 and 2. Ngā mihi ki a koe. There's plenty of opportunity for us to become Pākehā allies in the workplace and in our lives. By way of karakia, we like to close with a reference to relationships which we've spoken about tonight, about the unity and solidarity that can happen between us, about the enlightenment that can come from those relationships. So hence this karakia. Whakamaua te kōrero, whakamaua te wānanga, whakamaua ki a ranginui e tui honei, whakamaua ki a papatuhanuku takoro ake nei, whakatina ki te tumu te maramatanga, whakatina ki te tiatina, hui e, homi e, tae ki e, kia ora mai tātou. Well spent.
Just so, what brought you here tonight?
My wife. I'm really concerned about the current kind of climate around the government influence and the bill, obviously, and that's such a divisive piece of thinking, and it's taking us backwards fast. And so I'm really concerned for Māori, but as a treaty partner, I'm also really concerned for the other half of that, which is Pākehā as well. And so that's what brings me here tonight, is being amongst friends who have similar concerns and being able to share in those concerns and find a way forward to a better place.
And what are you going to take away from this evening?
Certainly, the funeral was great. Some different, trying to understand more what Te Tiriti would mean for as a Pākehā and how my own perceptions on that are formed. There's a lot of misinformation.
I feel validated in my beliefs and my values of my own journey so far to where I want to go, or where I want us to go as treaty partners. So I take great strength from being amongst people with similar concerns and similar hopes for the direction that I think the country would benefit from going in. And so, I take faith in the other people's concerns.
Thank you very much. So, what brought you out here tonight?
So I'm a new kaiako at Northtec, and I'm teaching the Level 4 certificate in health and wellbeing with the mental health and addictions strand. And obviously there is a lot of importance in there for how health can, what it's going to look like, true health for Māori. And I'm coming from a place of a lot of ignorance myself, which I become more and more aware of on a daily basis. I'm just aware that good resources are hard to come by, and scrounging around on the internet for translations of Te Tiriti and then just getting more confused because they reflect the bias of the translator who perhaps did not have the best interests of Māori in heart. A resource like this is just so valuable that I have booked all of the sessions like weeks before they came out, just so that I could be here and have this education to pass on to my students.
Thank you. And is there something specific that really struck you tonight? Like if you had to say what one thing would be your biggest takeaway?
I really loved Ngaire's diagram, just being able to have something visual and short pieces that give you, as she was saying, the importance of action. To just sit here in a room and all nod and agree on, oh yes, this is very important, doesn't do a whole lot. And so having that simple strategy for action, I think, is really valuable, and I look forward to copies of that becoming available in the public domain.
Thank you so much.